Am I like crooked? Kicked this. Is
Oh, looks pretty good to me.
that
All
better or
right.
worse?
Welcome, everyone. This is Pittsburgh Pat, and I'm here with.
Ryan Doyle. I didn't know you were waiting for me. I was waiting for you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey everybody,
Uh,
I'm Ryan
that,
Doyle.
yeah, that's
Okay.
terrible. I should be like, and with, and do something like, Craig
This
Ferguson
is
would do.
clearly a rehearsed conversation that we've
Yeah,
very carefully curated to make it like seem like it's an impromptu.
it's
But this
seamless.
is all scripted, folks.
Our impromptu is seamless. So what we're going to talk about today, or what one of the things, because our conversations always go, but is Dolmenwood. And
Mhm.
my first impressions, and I don't know what kind of experience, how much experience you have with Dolmenwood. How much experience do you have?
Well, it's my new favorite thing, so I've been reading a ton of it. Yesterday was the first time that I ran it, but I've been
Gotcha.
prepping it for a couple of weeks, and I've been like flirting with prepping it for a couple of weeks before that.
So I've just discovered this through you sending me some texts and emails and that sort of thing, and also being a player at the table. So I'm a PC at Ryan's DMing. And we have, just to fill it out, we have two other player characters at the table. Well, two other players at the table. There are apparently going to be multiple characters. That's something that's interesting, right? So we're going to
Hmm.
have um, not servants necessarily, but um, like a squire if you're a knight, or like a Sherpa if you're like going on an expedition, somebody like take care of the animals and take care of the provisions and that sort of thing. This is a very realistic like campaign, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it a lot. So it's an adaptation of old school essentials, which is I don't know. You can argue about all of these things for days and days and days, but it is a very well regarded, if not the best regarded, formatting of the basic expert old school D&D. And the gentleman who made that, Gavin Norman, has been working on Dolmenwood for 10 years. It's essentially his like home campaign. Um, and yeah, so you have retainers is the term of art, or like
That's what I was
hirelings,
looking for, retainers.
because life is cheap in old school D&D. Our buddy rolled up a magic user, right, a wizard, and he has 2 hit points, and he was
Yeah,
alarmed by that because we're all, for the most part, coming from fifth edition lens. I don't know how much experience you have had with like old school D&D, but the majority of my D&D career has been fifth edition,
right.
some Pathfinder, and I dabble in other things here and there, but like the heart of it has been fifth edition. So transitioning to a different style of play that's still like D&D down in its bones, like the Godfather of Dungeons and Dragons. It's been very interesting, and it's been a transition. I mean, I think we had a lot of fun last night, but I think there were some bumps in the road for my side of the screen
Oh,
of
really?
things.
See, I did not see that. You have so far been a seamless DM. I have to admit that I was seriously impressed by your DMing skill. And then last night I fell asleep to a bunch of YouTube videos talking about this universe, Dolmenwood, and
Mm.
again, as you mentioned, 10 years in the making, um, lots of great artwork, but the richness of the story. And I think that's not to take anything away from what you did, but like there's a great amount of backstory here. Like so were you reading a lot of that stuff, or you had already read it and were recalling it, or like when you were
Both.
doing descriptions of characters, like you were talking about the guy who owned the the tavern, who had the bath water, and he was
Mm-hmm.
stoking the fires,
Mm-hmm.
and he had his belly followed led him around because
Yes.
that's a wonderful turn of phrase that I've heard used before, and it's polite. And the that kind of description of like him missing teeth and having a crooked nose. So
in
those
in
were
the
all things.
book in the
Mhm.
book so there it's so flavorful and so punchy, or like don't do too much research, right, because spoilers. But
Right.
um
I want to explore. I
he's
want to
a
experience it.
he's a very talented TTRPG writer. From my side of the screen, it is there's so much there and so compact of a package, right? It's like it's what I strive for, but I get very wordy. But he's just like there was like four descriptors with commas. Like, here's what this guy is, and I just deliver them in a more verbose way because that's how I get talkative. But yeah, just a couple. Like, I know that guy. I worked with that guy for 4 years. The guy who's like his belly enters the room, a couple
Yes.
seconds before the rest of them does. Like, I know that guy.
Yeah. No,
And he's
and
like
it's thing
proud.
it but that's the interesting thing is so the play, and this is true for all writing. I was, one of my degrees is in writing, creative writing. So like one of the things I play with characters, and I also, for those who already know my channel, but they may not know me if we're on your channel and they're watching this, I do Adventure League DMing, and I also teach I teach Dungeons and Dragons to kids
Hmm.
for after school programs and that sort of thing. So and get paid for it, which is ridiculous. But I love it. And I know, right? This is no, everybody go out there and do this. Like this is a great way to teach kids finance and cooperative strategy and tactics and things that are going to serve them well, like resource management, how to get along with each other, and work
Hmm.
towards a common goal. Like there's a lot of great stuff. But yes, the difference between this and 5e, there's so many different things, but one of the things you mentioned was descriptors. And there's an interplay between like using an archetype, but not turning it into a stereotype. So you want to like
Hmm.
have that abbreviation for the archetype, but you want to have
Hmm.
like a distinctiveness about it that makes that character special, right? So
And
like,
this nails that so well. That's why I fell in love with it. We're whatever. We're in a transitional phase at one of my at the table. You join people coming and going. We're switching systems around. We're thinking about what to do next, and this just like bit me and would not let go because it's so good. It's also my like preferred vibe. I love a good fantasy like dark forest setting where the Fae are just around every corner and they're not just like a more attractive person that happens to have pointy ears. It's like, no, they're gonna make some weird bargain and they operate by their own rules and there's like just whimsical but dark at the
so I,
same time.
Yeah, I like so obvious. This is medieval, right? So we're in the classic D&D medieval
Hmm.
setting, right? And
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
also there were some interesting descriptors in the brief thing, which compared it to other intellectual properties. One that I
Hmm.
thought was really fascinating was Legend, the movie Legend from
Hmm.
1984, 1985. I can't remember the exact year. And that was, Tom Cruise and Mia Sara and the most my favorite devil portrayal on screen, by Tim Curry as Darkness, and just but the way the Fae in that are fickle, and
Hmm.
jealous and like you said, have their own agenda. Whereas, it's like the original Tinkerbell, not the cleaned up Tinkerbell, but the Tinkerbell who's like kind of nasty to people and like is jealous of Peter Pan and that sort of thing. So it's not like the little ones, the little fairy gardens with the happy gnomes and that sort of thing. Like everybody's got their own thing and it feels alive. And I think that's what's
Hmm.
interesting about it. There's a history to
Yeah.
everyone.
And that's what I strive in the tables that I have on the DM's Guild and like my homebrew setting. I try to breathe as much life and interconnectivity as possible to make it feel like it's not just a trope. It's not just like the Disneyfied two-dimensional fantasy wonderland. It's like, oh, you can walk up to anybody and have a conversation and you will maybe learn things. Um, and it's interesting. I think that was the bump that I was alluding to before because it's a hex crawl. Quite literally. It's formatted to be a hex crawl. It's very exploration based. Which again I gravitate towards. I've like injected a lot into my 5e game by myself because it's not supported as much in the rule set, and this is based on that. Like we roll dice, it's winter, camping is harder. You're not necessarily going to get a guaranteed long rest. You better have a bedroll. You better bring some firewood. You better there's like camaraderie checks. If you tell a good campfire story while you cook dinner, you have a better chance of succeeding at getting a long rest. Like there's every little detail is thought about and like meaningful. And I think transitioning into it, we got a little bogged down because it's a different mindset. I think I watched a few times, sort of like the completist gamer coming out, not necessarily from you, but the fighter at the table was like, all right, we're gonna go through and we're gonna collect every quest, and then we're gonna decide like what the best order to do all the quests are.
Yeah.
And
So
you're in one hex of 100 hexes, and
yeah,
I can give you 100 quests if you want. Like every time you
yeah,
kick over a rock, something spills out, and the overwhelm happened very quickly. So if I were to
yeah,
start over, I might control. I think you guys ended up with like 5 or 6
yeah.
like plot
Five and a
hooks.
half, I think you said, and that was pretty
Yeah.
close. And I think so we had different quests. Some seemed like the reward was so high compared to our
Mm,
starting gold. So we started with like
mm,
8 gold, and then I think the other two with 9. And one of the quests is like, well, if you come back with this brass ring, we're gonna give you, I'm gonna give you 2,000 gold. And it's like,
mm,
this sounds way above our level, but I don't know, so, but the thing is,
mm,
and I don't want you to give anything away in this, but what you were saying, one of the things that I was comparing was like the richness and the well thought out background of this backstory to what I get when I do run an adventure league module that we get from either the books or from like DMG uh, Dungeon DM Guild. Like we'll get a lot of stuff from that, and they're like modules that go alongside the books. So if you're running like Tomb of Annihilation, let's say. They
mm,
have like other like side quests that people have written that like interface. So and for instance, I ran one of those, and the backstory is so incomplete, or
mm,
you just don't know all of it. You'd have to have run the entire campaign and read the entire book, in order to do this. So like there's room for the DM. Actually, you have to, I think, as a DM, fill in the blanks. So
mm,
so that's what I end up doing. So for me, when I run Adventure League, somebody who sits at my table and plays an Adventure League model and then goes to a con or something where they run the same module, going to have a completely different experience because I look at it as a suggestion and
mm,
you know what I mean? And then I run what I think would be exciting. So like for instance, there was one that was set in the Tomb of Annihilation setting, which is on an island, a tropical island of Cholt. And when you did with weather effects, I am
mm,
totally stealing for the next one. But it's emphasized how oppressive, it's hot, it's oppressive.
mm,
And they were gonna go battle this like devil who had like crossed in, like the abyssal plane had somehow crossed into this pit. So they're gonna go there. But on the way they meet this dragon whose lover has been like or mate has been like kidnapped. So there's a side quest to do that. And I said, well, that's what I want to hear. This was for this is around Valentine's Day. So that was the
mm,
love story, right? But
mm,
then I'm like, we're on Chult. How could there not be any dinosaurs here? So I did that. So I'm like, okay, you got devils, dinosaurs, and dragons. It's gonna be D and D and D. And so
mm,
like, I threw it in there because I'm like, if I were playing this and I were on Chult and I found out later that there was a possibility of dinosaurs and we didn't see any, forget that. So these guys got to tame a dinosaur and take it along with them as a pack animal. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of adventure writing out there is about what happened and then has a big eye on like what the culmination is going to be, right? In weeks or months if we get there. And I understand how you get there, but I think it's a trap. I think it's a big mistake. And what Dolmenwood does so well, and what I do for myself in my prep, and what I try to do when I'm creating things for the public is like this is what's happening now. This is the part of the game that the players are going to interact with, um, and they're going to choose what is coming next. Because especially you're in like medieval fantasy world, not everyone has a classical education, right? Maybe the nobles know what happened 6 generations ago, but
Mm.
like the tavern keeper sure doesn't. He's not going to tell you the history of the world
No, his
from
world
the
is very
creation
small.
myth to the
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. He hasn't been 6 miles from this village since he was a child. He can tell you what happened down the block. He can tell you he's nosy about all his neighbors or whatever, but like he doesn't know the grand history of the empire that fell 6 centuries ago. Maybe he knows some like a song or a story about it, but he might not even
Right.
believe it, right?
Right. That's the thing.
Um,
It's a lot of hearsay And I think
Hmm.
that's fun. You can
Mm.
get misinformation, and then, you have to like sort out what's true. And but the way but some of the things you did which were interesting, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know how much of this is you and how much of it's written, but but like we had a possible quest where there were a bunch of guys who were basically feel like they're protecting the town. But then later we
Mm.
talked to the authorities and they're like, yeah, we got this vigilante problem. So now you have to think, okay, well, thank goodness we didn't get roped in that quest, or maybe we're now labeled as almost criminals.
Hmm.
So, I can already see where this is going to have decisions are going to have lasting ramifications.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the good shit for me. And that puts the game master on the back foot a little bit, right? I don't have this grand plan of what's going on. I have a thousand, again, I have 99 other hexes. You could burn this place to the ground and I don't care. There's plenty more to explore. But like that character was in there. The way I did not plan to try to rope you into his thing. It's kind of set up so you bounce off him pretty quickly because he's a repulsive person
Yeah. Yeah.
in several dimensions. But the way you guys navigated the town, like you went here for dinner instead of going there to sleep first. And so what you heard about him was through the lens of somebody else who was like a little more sympathetic to what the guy was trying to do. And therefore, you know, again, in the gamer mode, it's like, oh, that there's a person that has the exclamation mark. We're going to go to him, and if it's worth it, we're going to get his quest and complete it and gain our internet points, or
Sure.
And so
Get
when
our
you did
XP.
walk up
Yeah.
to that guy and expect him to be the vanilla quest giver, and it's just like, oh no, this is a real complicated person.
Well, that's
uh,
part of yeah, that was something that I wanted to address too. And uh, I know I played a little meta last night. And I did say things like, I found a quest giver, just kind of
yeah.
jokingly with the other two players that I haven't played with before. So so we're actually literally building camaraderie amongst ourselves, feeling out each other's sense of humor, and which intellectual properties we like to quote, and things of
Hmm.
that nature, which references, pop culture references we get, and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think this is going to be a lot of fun to really role play and just stay in character, right? And I think one of the things about character creation, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts
Hmm.
of it,
Hmm.
because it is different than D&D 5e. At least a lot of the ways D&D 5e is very forgiving. So if you say like, I want to play a bard, they're like, okay, then put your highest stat in charisma, and here's a standard array, and you can do it that way, or you can point by. But the way we rolled it up was different. So you want to tell them like how we rolled our
Yeah, we
characters?
we did we did 46 drop the lowest. I was generous. And Pat, if I remember correctly, you benefited greatly from that.
It was
We didn't do 3d6.
ridiculous.
We did 46 drop. Yeah,
I
you
rolled
came up,
so crazily
you
well.
had some
This
good options.
character's
But we
unbelievable.
went old school down the line. So the dice are telling you, like, all right, you have an 18 in
It's in
strength,
strength.
right? And
Don't put it
immediately
anywhere
you
you
know
want.
something about this character. Yeah, can't move it around. There's a house rule, not a house rule, but an optional rule where you can like subtract two to add one if you really had your heart set on that bard or whatever. But the dice tell you what kind of character, and I kind of mitigated that by letting everybody. Well, you joined us a little bit later, but I let everybody like roll a couple characters, get a feel for that system. Because again, characters are cheap too, so now people have a stable. I encourage my 5e players to do this as well, of like have a backup in mind because you might
Hmm.
die. Because I like a deadlier game, and I really like putting the fear into people, even if no one, I haven't killed a player character in a minute. But I like the specter there. So having a backup character, it takes the sting out of it a little bit. In
Hmm.
old school D&D, have a backup character because you're going to need it because
Hmm.
you have 2 hit points. You're the tank with like 7 hit points.
Oh, if you
Um,
play Tomb of Horrors, like, forget it. You better have
oh
like
yeah,
10 characters going into that, because it's going to
yeah,
happen. Like people are going to
yeah,
die. Yeah.
exactly.
That's the
There's
point. The
not a
point
ton of
is
like
the fun
gotcha
of
y
finding
stuff,
the
but
traps.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
It's,
like
it's,
you fail forward.
yeah, it's it's like watching a horror movie or something. It's kind of like the interesting ways that characters die. That's
Hmm.
the stupid ways characters die kind of thing, which is, and that's a specific type of campaign setting, but you've emphasized that this is going to be a lethal. So like if you like, go out in the woods, you could get eaten by a bear.
Hmm.
That's possible. Like just like in real life. Like, hey, let's go to Yosemite. Let's go camping. It's gonna be awesome. Brr. Okay, let's get back in the car really quick. Like that sort of thing can happen. And I think that's gonna make this a lot more interesting because basically, D&D has always been lampooned or has often been lampooned as being like, you're a bunch of murder hobos running around, like from town to town, just killing things or people, or at the best, you're like the Witcher, which is you take care of problems, but you are a killer because nobody else wants to do it.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's kind of not the way this is being played. I think that's one of the reasons I really liked the fact that you let me do or I decided to do the knight character instead of the straight fighter character, because
Hmm.
now that brings into this whole like kind of mythos, that's explained in the book. It was talking about high chivalry and courtly, and I'm going to bring in courtly love and that kind of thing because you
Hmm.
introduced my mistress in the sense that not lover, but like the lady
Your
of the
liege
house.
lord. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like this is like basically one step below God, like you would do anything for her. Your ultimate duty is to serve her in some way, even through any action that you're doing. It should be, reflect on in a good light on her. And then to actually see her as a 21-year-old. And that's interesting too. Like we rolled for age, we rolled
Hmm.
for hairstyle, we rolled for weight and all our earthly possessions. There was no like, oh, I'm going to buy a grappling hook. Like, well, okay, you have a grappling hook. I mean, later you could go into town in the market, but I found out real quick, well, I don't have enough money to buy anything. So like I was gonna, I still might sell my lance and get a sword because carrying around a 10-foot lance is kind of like awkward and heavy, and encumbrance is a thing, which
Encumbrance is a thing.
I never do in 5e, but like this is going to make things very interesting.
And it sounds, I could see, someone who doesn't have experience with like a more old school style coming from fifth edition, hearing all this and being like, man, that sounds awful. But one, all of these limitations give you creativity, right? Like if I walk in, like I'm gonna make Thor, right? I'm making a Tempest cleric and it's Thor. Whereas like I sit down, it's like I don't know what's gonna happen. And like this character like appears in front of me that like arises organically. That's the good stuff for me. And now I can occupy that. And you end up doing things that you wouldn't have otherwise. Um,
We didn't even make up our names.
we rolled for everything, and like
Yeah,
you don't have to go that route, but it's there. I love tables, and every little like the trinkets are amazing. Every little detail's perfect, incredible, and like the interplay of different, like the friar had like jug ears and like
yeah,
scraggly hair or something. It was just
yeah.
like perfect. Like again, this like
You could
one,
see
two
it.
little like a sentence fragment, perfectly like crystallizing a character. Real talent there.
I
Um,
think, and I think so the actor part of me loves this. Like this is like you're given a role.
hmm.
Now, an actor who's given a script, can look at that script and they can sort of maneuver a little bit, but ultimately the character is the character, right? So I'm
Hmm.
playing a character, you know, but I'm informing that maybe with my own experience. But, this guy's, got an 18-inch strength. He's a woodcutter. He's been his personality is enthusiastic but naive or gullible, I should say. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's perfect for a 21-year-old, woodcutter that's just became a squire. And he maybe like wasn't born into nobility, or maybe he came from a family that was down on its luck and now he's trying to re-establish the family name. Who knows? We're, that sort of thing, is makes it interesting to me. The backgrounds, that's one of the things about 5e I always like too, is that we don't focus on as much of the backgrounds, but the backgrounds can inform not only like skills, but possessions, proficiencies and that sort of thing. And I think it this experience has given me an idea that I was just talking to my wife about at lunch. For when I start the next 6 week session of teaching the kids, is that I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the room and say, like, okay, here's a bunch of backgrounds. Now, what's something a noble would say in
Mm-hmm.
given this situation? Okay, given the same situation, what's something an urchin would say, or a
Mm-hmm.
sailor, or a soldier? What's the difference between what's something a sailor would say and a soldier would say, right? They're both maybe military archetypes, not necessarily the sailor, but like, you know, how would it be different? I mean, when I talk to my Air Force buddies, they talk differently than my Navy buddies. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So and to have like middle schoolers try to think about this stuff when they're forming their own personalities, their own
Mm-hmm.
characters aren't formed yet. So now it
Mm-hmm.
informs them on like, oh, maybe this, I mean, I hope so. And at best, it informs them, maybe this is how I'm being perceived now when I use this type of language. When I construct but if I thoughtfully construct my language, then maybe I'm perceived as something else. And I've been trying to emphasize this because there's this whole thing with kids, and we were all kids that age. There's things that you say and do, there's slang, that sort of thing, but how that's perceived in certain situations may be to your benefit and not. So
Mm.
letting kids be aware of that, and I think role playing helps anyone do this, right? It
Yeah,
helps
it's code
adults.
switching.
It helps adults
Uh-huh.
do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're
Yeah,
sitting in go ahead.
I try very hard to have the NPCs care about what you're saying. And again, what I like about this old school style is that like I don't think I rolled dice. We rolled dice on like to make the characters and to like determine the weather and the
The
dates and the
weather, oh my God.
birthdays. But like there were no I don't think I called for a single skill check in the 2 to 3 hours that we played. It's just
And there
like
was no
your
combat.
character's there was no combat, but like your character says a thing, the NPC reacts to it based on who they are and how you said it, not the roll of the dice, right? Skill versus every time I pick up a die, it's luck determining the outcome here.
I
Where
was wondering about that because when I went up to, like, my character went up to these two noble women at the bar that were kind of like, nah, this isn't great. We don't want to be here. And
Mhm.
I tried to kind of compliment them and maybe
Mhm.
charm them a little bit. And you didn't call for a skill check. That was cool. I just, yeah, because that's a situation where, in 5e, if I were a DM, I would have definitely been like, okay, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do persuasion? Do you want to do
Right.
intimidation? Do you want to do
Right.
deception? How do you want to do this? And that's the classic Matt Mercer, how do you want to do that thing? But it was so smooth the way you did it. It
Mm.
was like watching a movie. It was like reading a novel. It wasn't there wasn't like, and now I'll turn to page 34. If you go down the stairs, like the choose your own adventure kind of thing. This was
Yes.
way smoother than that.
Yes. It's not just you're not just pushing the button on the character sheet that's going to get you the best outcome. You are thinking about and there's you don't have to you have an actor's background, you inhabit the character, right? But like I don't require you to like create the cogent argument that's going to convince the NPC and say it verbatim necessarily every time. But like flashback 5 6 weeks ago, my buddy had all his ducks in a row, approaches the Banshee actually, and Lost Mine of Fandelver. Has a gift, is very polite, addresses her properly in the correct language. So I give him advantage on a charisma tech. I think we went persuasion. He rolled a 1 and a 2. Boom. So she pops the visage. I think everybody runs. I didn't kill everybody, but like they were way outclassed, and like he did everything perfectly. And the dice said no and okay. A banshee is fickle, right? Like I made it make sense in my mind and in the story and everything.
Sure.
But driving home that night, I was like, I shouldn't have had him pick up the dice. I should have just given it to him. And in fifth edition, that kind of cheats somebody who, all right, I took the time to do my homework. Literally, I did the math. I built a character who's good at charisma. I am not good at hitting people because I'm good at talking people. So if you don't let me push that button, you're taking something away from me.
That's one way to look at
Whereas,
it. There was a guy, yeah, the last 2 weeks ago, I ran a tier 3, and good. These guys are good. These characters are good at everything they specialize in, and
mhm,
he had advantage on a roll, and he rolled 2 1s, and I'd never seen that before, never. So that 1 in 400 chance, eventually you're going to
mhm,
see it, but that was the
mhm.
first time I had ever seen it happen in front of my eyes, and it was hilarious. So it's the fails that I remember. That's why
Yes.
playing min max characters is so much fun because I
Mhm.
saw a lot of times. In fact, when you mentioned the drop two, add one, I immediately thought, oh, why didn't I do that? But there's a rider to that rule in Dolan Wood that is, or I'm sorry, Dolmenwood. I keep saying that wrong.
Dolmen. So the dolmens are the standing stones that dot the forest,
Gotcha.
that
So they're
are
like
clearly
Saracens
significant.
or something like that. The standing stones. Dolmen Wood is that you can do that, but only if you're under a 12, right? To make
There's
something
a
a
cap.
13.
It's 12 or 13.
I
You
think it's
can't
to
use
make
the
it a 13 because 13
there's a
is where you get
point
+1.
by writer. Yeah, there's a point by writer where you can't. So if you have your heart set like I want a bard, I will burn every other ability score to get my
Charisma,
whatever charisma over the bare minimum to be a bard because there's requirements. Not everyone can be a knight. If you can't pick up a lance, they're not going to train you to be a knight, you know?
probably not.
If you're illiterate, they're not going to let you study at the
Scholar,
Academy
yeah.
of, the Arcane.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I think it's interesting. This is the first, and again, this is an old school thing. This is BX, but there's a bonus to XP accrual if you're good at what you're good at. If you are a fighter and you have a high strength score, you might get an extra 5% XP. So you're leveling faster. So if you're better at what you're doing, it's a feedback loop,
Oh, that was
which
Dungeon
I
Siege.
like.
The video game Dungeon Siege was like that. So like
Oh,
when
interesting.
you would play at the beginning, you would have all three skills. Like you would, have your ranged attack, your magic, and your melee attack. But then once you started doing one thing more than the others, you would advance quicker. And
Hmm.
so you basically just stuck with that. So you just played an archer, or you played like a melee dude, or you were a magic user. But it makes sense in a real world way, right? So like I just
Hmm.
studied quarterstaff. So if I go back and I study small sword, then it's going to be a lot easier because I already know what a bind is. I already know what um, I know some of the moves. Let's put it that way. I don't want to get into any technical stuff, but if I've never done that before, then I got to start from scratch, right?
Right,
Whereas,
right. And
so if I don't know, there's, like people that are good at racket sports, like it just makes sense. Like somebody that's good at tennis is going to be good at pickleball. They're going to be good at ping pong. They're going to be good at, that just makes sense because they know tricks that non-players don't know.
and you're gonna advance faster. You're gonna pick up the sport faster, and you're going to continue to improve faster. Okay, eventually you plateau, which I guess is true in the character arc too.
Oh,
But yeah, I really well, again, it takes more and more XP as levels up.
oh, I see what you're saying.
There's also varying XP, so people are going to be leveling up at different levels, which sounds like a nightmare if you're running fifth edition, but it's like
Mhm.
fine as long as everyone's within 4 levels of each other, you're cool.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's funny because that's come up, and
mm,
it's not. It's people are like, oh, well, it's fine. Tier one is tier one. The difference between a level one character and level four character is day and night. A
yes.
difference between 5 and 10 is day and night. A difference between 11 and 16 is ridiculous. In fact, I mean, they're all good. Don't get me wrong. They're all good, but I threw a mage, an abjurer at the party to soften them up. She had a meteor storm scroll, just one, just so she could fire it away to them. And I did it as a color thing because it was near Easter. It was the week before Easter, so I had jelly beans rain down from the sky, and I actually had physical jelly beans come down on the
Nice.
little
Make a
little
raid.
yeah little things exactly. So the And then when they got treasure, I had chocolate coins, so I threw a bag of chocolate coins at him. But the 16th level wizard said, "Oh, I don't think so." And then
Hmm.
rolls counter spell, rolls like a
Hmm.
19, and
Hmm.
then well, all those jelly beans just went whoop, back up in the sky. So like, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's just that's the thing with 5e. It's keeping the party, and that's why um when I do anything that's not just a one shot, if it's gonna be a level up kind of situation, and we're gonna do multiple sessions, I just do everybody levels up at the same time because otherwise
Yeah.
it gets too unbalanced, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Milestone is the way to do it in fifth edition.
That's what I do. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. This is not, I'm not like bashing 5e.
No, no, no. We are
It's just,
actually comparing the differences between my
yeah.
first impression, our first impressions, and 5e, and 5e is our touchstone, right? That's the one we
Hmm.
know. So
I mean, I like variety, right? And playing the same game for years and years now. It was time to change up, even before whatever the drama of 2023. But beyond that, I find in fifth edition, I love the first few levels because the immersion is easier for me. As you level up, you're very quickly a Marvel superhero, and the removal the space between the player and the character becomes very great, right? And it's
right.
cool to like imagine yourself doing these amazing things and you're calling down a meteor swarm from the back of a griffin or something.
Mhm.
Um, and like, okay, eventually you can get there in the old school way too. But like when you are just like some schlub walking out trying to earn some coin to improve his gear so he can survive easier, walking through the forest, like that's easier for me to project myself into, right? If you get hit with an arrow, you're in trouble, right? Somebody shot you with an arrow, or you're face to face with a bear. It's not like, oh, this is going. I hope this is fun and not boring because it takes too long. It's like, no, this is dangerous. If a bear bites you in the neck, you might be in trouble. That could be it for you.
Well, I
Think
mean,
about it before charging in.
that's what our friend Bertrand did was he was a fighter character, and the first thing he did was look for work, and that was a smart move, you know. I
Yep.
That's probably what a character would do. Like they want to
Mhm.
eat that night, they got to make some coin, and it's freezing outside. I rolled a double zero for the weather, so it was like, you know, 5 below 0 during the day, and it was going to be colder at night. So like, and then the next day was not much better. It was all windy. So, these effects. I like the fact that there are environmental factors that are going to affect the environment. I mean, affect the gameplay. And yeah, these are all great things to inform me on how to do my next 5e session too. So
Mhm.
that's what's really neat is that the more I learn about other systems, like
Mhm.
for instance, there's a Star Wars role playing game. There's three. I can't remember which one was the one that I actually played. I think it was Edge of the Empire, something like that. And it has specific kinds of dice, and
Mhm. Mhm.
you know what I'm talking about.
I
So,
do. I
so
can see
you
it
can
in my mind.
succeed at something, but you can also have a consequence. So, for
Mhm.
instance, like you hack into the security system in order to gain access to the data files. However, it trips off an alarm. So you
Mhm.
succeed at what you wanted to do, but now there's like a squad of stormtroopers that may be heading your way. And I learned that whenever I first played that, I don't know how many years ago, and I've always remembered that. So I will do that sometimes where if somebody makes a roll and they barely pass. I know that's not the way the rules stated in 5e, you either win or lose, but that's the
Mhm.
way one of my interpretations is like, I'll say, okay, yeah, you were able to pick the lock, but in doing so, you broke your lockpick tools and you made a lot of noise. So the people in the room are going to know you're coming in, that kind of thing.
And that, yeah, I do that a lot of like degrees of success, right? The difference between what's the difference? Okay, it's a pass fail, cool. But if there's degrees of success, the difference between a 17 and a natural 20 will be significant. And I think that's kind of how I started down that path of like, okay, crit, you get a little something extra on
Sure.
top. Um, But also at the same time, when like you're setting a DC and you're like, honestly, some of the time, not all, yeah, I was almost at a lot of the time. Some of the time, I don't have the DC in mind when I call for the check.
Mm.
When it's some improvised thing, it's not in the book, it's not something I prepped. Roll the dice. If it's a 19, I'll think about it. I don't have to think about it. If it's a 3, I don't have to think about it. And you get those like 12,
Blurry,
13,
blurries.
and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, that's not decisive. So now, what I do half the time is go back and like, okay, can figure out what the DC would have been. But success at a cost is such a great answer for those moments of like, okay, you do it, but and you just have more notes to play, right? More colors to paint with when you're doing it that way.
Yeah. And
It's
I
not
think
just like the
if the
door's open.
yeah, and if the player character like informs me of something and tells me like how they're going to do it, so they're going to get to that window. The rogue is going to wants to roll in order to get into that window, the second story window. Like that's great. But how are you going to do that? You know?
Mhm.
Oh, well, there's vines on the side of the. Okay, great. How much do you weigh? Uh, there's vines, like
Mhm.
stuck. I mean, is there a trellis? Is there a ladder in the garden? Is there a tree nearby? That kind of thing. So, and that's the other thing that's nice about like the 3-word description of an environment is that unless you specifically put something in the environment, now you can add things or you
Mhm.
can, because once you put it in, you can't take it away. You tell them
Mhm.
that there's a tree branch that reaches over to the within like 3 feet of the window. Why don't you just open the window for them? I mean, like, it's like you're leading them, and that's great. You can do that because if you really you need a plot device, you need something to happen, but you want the players to think that they made a decision to make that happen. That's a writer's trick, right? That's like a
Mhm.
that's a trick, but it's a good trick, and because we want immersion, as players, we want to feel like we affected the story, and so, if as a DM, sometimes you got to like. You don't want to railroad the characters necessarily, but you want them to go in that room, like go in the door, Stop looking at the door and go in the door, It's a door. you know, like it's the classic, like, if you tell a D&D player it's a door, they stand there for 20 minutes and argue about who's going to touch the door.
I think a lot of Dungeon Master's first like hard-earned lesson is putting a like there's the door is barred. It's a strength check to open it up. Everybody fails, and the adventure can't advance. And then
Yeah.
you literally have gatekept the story, gate kept the story, gatekeepered the story, and yeah, and then how do you proceed? And that's another reason I like the old school approach of like the answer's not on the character sheet. It's the player that's getting tested, not the character. So,
That's one way to
oh,
play. So that's
I
that's a
brought a
very
I brought a
interesting way to play it.
crowbar. Boom. Okay, cool. It's open. No check required. The dice can't burn you on this.
That's the thing
Um,
with puzzles that are always tough for me is that whenever I put a puzzle in there, it's like, does the character know how to do a Sudoku, or does the player know how to do a Sudoku? Like
right,
it's
right.
it's if you've heard the Sphinx riddle, then like that doesn't work, like I mean, or maybe it does for a second, but like I still have not found the balance with a good puzzle that is just takes just the right length of time. So it's not boring, but it's not like, checking a box.
Hmm.
So that's why puzzles, I love the idea of putting puzzles in my adventures, but I have rarely seen it done well, you know.
Yeah, you have to know your audience, and I think you need to have that consensus. You either built it the first time the puzzle comes out, or you have it out of the gate. But like, I don't like, especially on the player side, but also on the game master side, when I'm like, okay, here is the puzzle, and someone's like, oh, what do I roll for that? And it's like, oh, hold on,
Mhm.
like, you can solve the puzzle, and there is that divide again between the player and the character, and my goal is to do as much as possible to crunch that down so people are
Mm.
inhabiting the role of the character. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean acting and doing the voice and everything, but like having the experience, seeing through their eyes and interacting with the world as if it were real and as they were in it. So yeah, I would prefer if you are trying to solve the puzzle opposed to you're looking at your character sheet like, oh, well, I have a +3 in intelligence, and if he gives me guidance and she helps me, then maybe we can pass this and
Or maybe get a clue. I mean, that's
or
one
maybe
way
get
to
a
do it.
clue.
What you actually do it meta in the sense that the character rolls well, but then you give the player a clue. So they still
Hmm.
have to use their brain to solve it. And then if it gets too much, then you just let the character do it. But it's, you know, but I see what you're saying about like the character in the sense that like there may be a couple. Here's one way I would do it. So there's a couple ways to solve the puzzle, right? So you can sit there and play chess against death, or you can just like clobber him with the sword, like, or I'm playing chess with death, and then the barbarian comes over and rattles his bones with a great axe, So,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, I will allow for creative solutions, but yeah, I think that's one part of 5e, or well, that's one part of just generally role-playing games that I find can be troublesome. The other thing that is an interesting comparison between Dolmenwood and 5e, I think D&D 5e, is that um, exploration in D&D 5e. I've seen more than one D&D YouTuber talk about how there isn't there's no rule set in 5e. There's like two paragraphs
Hmm.
in the books that, in the core text that says, you know, well, the player characters explore the environment, they ask the DM describes it, and then they go on. And that's it. So so what I like about Dolmenwood is it looks like there's going to be a lot of exploration and that,
Hmm.
or the potential for exploration. And I think that's going to inform me as a DM on how to incorporate some of those entertaining aspects, because my memories of early D&D were a lot of exploration. There was
Hmm.
a lot of discovery, and there was the pencil on the graph paper, like I'll draw the next corner, and here's the tentacle wall behind the secret door, and that kind of stuff. And we used to sit around in high school and write these things, draw these things instead of doing math. And you know all the time and effort you put into drawing a map. Whereas now at 5e, it's like, plop. Okay, here's a square room. There's a chest in the corner. Is it a mimic? Is it not? That kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, that's part of the part of it's what I do, which is Adventure League, which you're basically 2.5 hours. You're doing a module. There may be people at the table, there probably aren't, and there may be people that are playing for the very first time. So you have to, there's a lot of variables, and you have to try to make everything palatable to everyone. So you make a weak sauce. But like, when you have like what we're doing, which is like a recurring adventure every Tuesday with the
Hmm.
same people, then you're going to get to know, oh, well, Bertrand likes history, and he'll know this, and Mike really understands Arcana, and he's the magic user, so this flavorful for him, so that's going to make it more interesting as a DM, I think, you know, being able to customize the environment a little bit.
Yeah, and because it's so rich and chock full already, it's like what, and I think that was the mistake. I was like, what do you want to do? All of these things, like, a knight, a wizard, and a fighter walk into a bar. Who do you talk to? Which thing do you follow? And I gotta know what are all of my options. And I think I should have cut that off earlier. Basically, the clock stopped that from happening because you guys would have continued to explore Prigwort and pick up plot hooks, not even coupons yet. And there's 6 ways to leave this hex, right? And there's 3 rows out of town, and you talk to somebody, they're gonna tell you something else. Like there's a lot left on the table still. and I saw Mike's eyes because so they're player roles too. So Mike was
Yes.
responsible for keeping track of everything. He was responsible for taking notes, and I think that job is going to be divvied up. I think he's going to do the calendar and the weather, like where were we on this day? What's the weather doing? So when we pick it up, we know what the weather was, and there's holidays and chances for things to happen on certain days or whatever. So I think
Birthdays.
he's going to be like the timekeeper.
Yeah.
But he was overwhelmed by like, okay, there's
It's a lot to
40
write down.
proper nouns on this piece of paper that I don't even know how to spell because they're all made up gibberish. And how do I parse all of this information? Because it's my responsibility for everyone at the table now.
Well, yeah,
So I think
I
that
wasn't
was
even
too
the
much.
chronicler and I wrote,
Yeah.
5 pages of notes. And
And
so, yesterday, and that wasn't my responsibility. I guess I'm supposed to be the inventory guy, but yeah, we probably will divide it up. And I think, yeah, Mike, maybe the journal entry, and then, um, maybe Bertrand seems to be good at like parsing out the quests. So maybe he's the guy that keeps track of the leads, you know.
mhm,
And then, I don't know what my role will be in addition to like being the quartermaster, just keeping track of who has what, who has the 50 foot length of rope,
mhm,
that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm sure eventually that will become essential, especially as we get more characters and maybe pack animals and things of that nature, or a wagon or something crazy. So, yeah, but that's part of it too, right? So like that's what we used to do back in the day. We used to make our maps, and we'd have a week or so or more to think about what we were going to do next. And that's what's really cool about session one is we got 5 or 6 things that we can ponder, but it was smart of you to say before the session ended, hey, why don't you guys pick 3 things
yeah. Well,
so you're not
yeah,
having to do all this homework?
because it's impossible for me to prep. It's a sandbox. It's just a giant, beautiful, packed to the gills sandbox. So it's impossible for me to prep. I can prep 5 things poorly,
Right.
maybe, or I can prep the 1 or 2 things well.
Right.
Um, and again, I want you to have ultimate freedom. You can walk off in any direction. You just have to tell me which direction you're going to walk off in now. And that also keeps it moving because again, I think a little bit of like analysis paralysis set in where it's like, how do we decide between these 5 things? And there's plenty of opportunity to add more to that list before you start removing things from that list. Um, so yeah,
Geography
just
was seemed like
being
the first,
decisive.
yeah. Yeah, it seemed like a
Yeah.
geographical thing. Well, I mean, that just seemed like I wanted something easy so we didn't get killed on our first quest and something that was close. So it seemed like the vigilantes were reasonable. They were, like, couple, one leader and some youngins that maybe or
Mhm.
maybe not can be intimidated. We'll see what happens. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun. But again, there will be consequences because the
Mhm.
owner of the tavern where we stayed the night is their grand uncle. So, if you just like roughhouse these guys and throw them in jail, now you got somebody who's like, "Hey, you threw my relatives in jail like that. You didn't have to do that. Like, why'd you do
Mhm.
that?" And yeah, he might not be like politically correct, but he wants to protect the town. So like, he's got a mixed motive there, and I like the shades of gray. I really like that. That's one of the reasons I've been playing Fallout New Vegas since it came out 2010 because you can change the environment. Like
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
actually have ramifications. Like Mass Effect 3 or Mass Effect. I mean, there are what I think are the good RPGs have that quality about them. So you can replay and say, oh, well, what if Skyrim? What if what if you were an Imperial instead of,
Mhm.
Skyrim actually gets a little linear towards it, but like, you know what I'm saying?
And that's what D&D can do better than any other game. And
Mhm.
that's what I try to extract from my D&D experience because in a video game, there's a lot of things you can do better in a video game, right? I can get very descriptive with words, but I'm not going to paint a picture with my words the same way a video game can, especially these days. But the best video games, maybe there's a couple different endings, right? Maybe there's a couple different tracks, maybe there's a couple different factions you can join. You know, it's like a couple different video games stapled together, really, at the end of the day. Um,
But
Whereas
there's
in
a
D, like
limit.
I have no, there is no limit here.
Hmm.
There's, you know, five main factions, six main factions. You guys are already affiliated with two of them, kind of.
Hmm.
And there's the interrelationship between all of them, and you can become your own thing, but like every decision you start to make is going to have ramifications and change how you're viewed by certain people and certain, you know, power structures, and all of that's going to have consequences on the world of the game. So I have no idea what happens next, really. I have ideas, obviously. I can't I think about it, but there's an infinite amount of possibilities in a way that gets me very excited because there's not much else like that. However good the game is, there's only someone had to decide where you were going first. So it
Yeah,
renders in front of you.
but you nailed it. You just said D&D. That's what D&D is best at. And I think, that's what you do when you play a game. You play to its strengths. And that's what we're doing here. There's such a rich lore and what you said about video games is interesting. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's graphics, lots of interesting colors, even like, Final Fantasy's almost photorealistic. But like if you could have like, an anime character look almost like a photograph. But it doesn't matter eventually, like, but there's nothing beats your imagination. There's a guy that
Hmm.
I played, and we joke about this a little bit, but my one friend, he was like, I like when you DM because I can see it like it's a movie in my mind, and I'm like, that's you, dude. That's your imagination.
Yes.
I may be tickling that in the right way, but like that's all you, because I only said three words, you
Hmm.
know? Like,
Hmm.
I said like, musty, dilapidated and, ancient. And you went wherever you went with that, dude. That's you. I'm not responsible for your imagination, but that's what makes it so wonderful. And that's what the best writing does too, is it allows
Yes.
us to inform
Yes.
it ourselves.
And maybe it's because I come from like a very literary background that I enjoy it so much, but like that is what I try to cultivate to the point where in my other game I run online and like I run Owlbear Rodeo because it's simple. Like I run a pretty as like lo-fi analog game because the more that I do, the less that you're doing. The more that you become a passive observer and you're not engaging your imagination. And there's so much of everything we perceive comes through a screen at us, and we just sit there. Even if we're controlling it, you're not creating the same way when you're playing a video game as you do in a TTRPG when you're doing it right. And that's what really attracted me to this old school mindset of, again, not even like put the character sheet down, flip it over. Like it's about what would you do in this situation, because that's what's going to determine the outcome here.
Mm.
It's not just like, oh, this is a fun exercise. What would you do in this situation? Okay, let's see if it worked based on what the numbers say. And that
Yeah,
comes it
that
comes down to that at a certain point, yes, but like putting less of an emphasis on that and more of an emphasis on your character interacting with the world as if it were real,
was
having a
my
greater effect.
my idea of the dice was that that's when there is an element of luck,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that's just the random element of chance. And that's, I mean, literally, and you can affect that with your scores to a certain
Hmm.
degree. But
Hmm.
but ultimately, if somebody says, I want to jump on the dragon, I'm going to let them try to jump on the dragon, like I'm
Yes.
not, I'm going to also maybe reemphasize this is a really dangerous thing to do. This
Hmm.
thing can kill you with a look, well, with a breath. But okay, and
Hmm.
invariably, when I run, uh, what is it? The first module, Rise of the Dragon, or Horde of the
Hmm.
Dragon Queen. Um, you know, there's always some level one character who just wants to jump on the dragon, usually a kid, but like, hey, you know what? You're not going to ever be able to do that in real life. Yes, I'm going to let you do that. Sure.
Yes.
You may die, but I'm going to let you
Hmm.
jump on it. So, and invariably they roll like a 20. It's crazy. So, I love it. But, yeah, but I think you're right. D&D has some real advantages and, it, it can vary based on the way the DM runs the game. But yeah, we've had some really good points here, I think. But Dolmenwood looks fun, interesting, rich, deep, and it can be game. It's even been compared, they said Lord of the Rings meets Game of Thrones kind of thing. So there's
Yes.
politics, there's
Hmm.
factions, there's which is one of the things about Game of Thrones that's so much fun. And then those alliances, I don't know, but the way Game of Thrones did it, they can shift. So, and that's the way politics works.
It's
So,
incredible. I've
yeah.
been holding back of like gushing about the lore because I don't want to.
Yeah,
You're
you
at my
don't want to
table,
ruin anything. I get it.
but
But
like,
but for
oh, it's
those
been
of
a
us,
joy to read. Yeah,
but for
it's
our,
so good. It is
well,
so good.
yeah, for our audience though, we can you're gonna tell them like, is this something as a DM that you want to pick up? I can already see it would be useful for any DM to like take
Yeah.
a
So
gander at these materials.
a good like little crystal like litmus test of it. We were talking about puzzles before. And like, okay, if the player rolls well, they'll get like a clue or something. There is, and technically it's optional, but there is pipeweed in this game, pulling on the Lord of the Rings reference. And one, there's a D20 table, right? There's like 20 types, and they all have different flavors and scents and like effects, which you can make more mechanical, but or can sit just in the realm of flavor. But there's an optional rule. If you sit down and smoke a pipe for a turn for 10 minutes and contemplate, if you can roll an intelligence check and derive a clue that way. If you sit down with your party members, for every person who's participating in this little smoke sesh to like contemplate the problem, your odds of improving that result increase so that you can like figure something out by sitting there having a smoke and thinking about it. And again, there's just a beautiful, there's a little D20 table with like just the right amount of detail to make each one of these things evocative and flavorful. And every aspect of the game is like that. You go foraging, there's 20 kinds of plants, there's 20 kinds of mushrooms, and that's what's in the player's handbook. Certain regions you can find rare things in the that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is a beautiful, well thought out world. So much detail, and each detail is gameable. We'll have an interaction with the character on theme, fits the tone. There's not a wasted word in a 600 page exploration based book. Like, it's great.
Amazing.
So good.
Amazing.
Check it out.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I gotta give it to this author. He's just something, this is
yeah,
special.
I mean,
And the
I'm
artwork is
gonna,
good.
oh, there's some beautiful, it's like paintings. They are, yeah, the artwork is beautiful. Again, perfect, like fairy tale, but like Grimm's fairy tale, beautiful and alluring, but scary,
Right. So
threatening.
right. So there's this one that I can't I would give the credit to the YouTuber if I could remember, but I was asleep and waking up and drifting off. The Yeah, there's like a couple of young people like kind of prancing through a meadow, like they're having a fun like holiday afternoon sort of thing in the upper part of the painting. And then in the lower part of the painting, in the bushes, there's a skeleton, like it's black and white and green. And, up here it's blue and, and grassy and lighter greens. And it's just, and the YouTuber said, this is a really great analogy for the whole thing. It's
Hmm.
just, you've got this wonderful, like, here's gnomes and here's like, fairies and here's like humans interacting with them. But then there's this dark undertone, so
And you could lean into one or the other, right? Like I sound like a hard ass this whole conversation, and you're running for 11-year-olds. So know your audience. You could lean into the more Disney-fied aspects of it. If you have a little experience under your belt, you could run, it's a setting, more than it's a system. It's old school essentials modified a little bit. But it's a setting guide. So you want to run this in 5e, it would take a little bit of work, but you could do it. You want to run it in a different OSR system, it would take less work, but easily doable. But yeah, it's a setting guide more than anything. That's what got me to buy in.
Gotcha. So, yeah, so we'll do some due diligence and tell people how to buy it. And then, yeah, I don't know. So far, session one, I'm gonna say like a 8 out of 10, like I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
Nice, glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
What are you thinking as far as running it? What do you think about difficulty or that kind of stuff? You want to give some people an
It's
idea?
easy to run. I got a tablet, so we should say it's not actually done yet. Dolmenwood is still a work in progress. You can support it on BackerKit if you're watching it right now. It should be dropping soon. It's mostly complete. The PDFs. There's a couple like examples that he hasn't written out yet, and there's some like artwork here, spaces. But if you back it, you get the PDFs, which is what I'm working on. So I got myself a little cheap tablet to be my D&D tablet. So allow me to immerse you in this fantasy land where anything is possible. Oh shit, I closed the tab. What do I? So that broke immersion a little bit, I think. And again, I think maybe easing in fifth edition players to a more exploration style of play, I could have done a little better of a job with, but I'm always my, toughest critic. It was a
Oh,
blast. There were big moments in the first session. It was, yeah, a lot of cool stuff on the table
without a
already.
doubt, we are always like our own worst critics. All right. So we
Mm,
always, go like, oh, so what I've started to do, and I don't know if this will help anybody out there or not, but what I've done as a Adventure League DM is that I'll run the module twice.
mm,
So I'll run it for Adventure League. Like I ran this tier 3 for Adventure League, and then my evil Spelljammer campaign, the DM couldn't make it. He got sick at the last minute. And so I just said on the Discord, hey, we can still show up at Phil's and we can play. I'll just if you guys want to do a one shot, I'll just run this and I'll customize the levels to level 5 characters. And they were all up for it, so I did. So now I ran the same module twice inside of 2 weeks,
mm,
actually like a little less than a week. So now it's here. But
mhm,
now I got it in my back pocket, literally. If I walk into Adventure League tomorrow night and somebody doesn't show up, I can be like, well, I can do this, I'll just modify, you know what I mean? Like on the fly. And I think the second session's always better because,
mhm,
I saw what the players bid on the first time. And I
mhm,
also saw what they liked. And now I'm like, oh, more of this. So more pepperoni. Okay, these guys like pepperoni and not sausage. So like, okay, I can do that. So this next time I gave him a big baddie that, because the first one was like 2 heavy combats. And then during the second session, these guys just did this amazingly, like 6 round combat. I couldn't believe it, but
mm,
none of them got into melee. They were all sniping from the sides, illusions, all really creative stuff, which I
mhm,
loved. But then I thought, we just did an hour and a half combat with 3 characters. I can't do another one. So I had like a freaking time dragon and a beholder sitting in the library where they needed to get the book, reading the book that they needed to get. So they're not going to fight these guys. Like they're not
mhm,
that dumb. And so they're
mhm.
like, so it turned into this big social encounter. So, that didn't happen the first time. So, you know, it live and learn. But from the player's point of view, I didn't see anything wrong with pacing or any of it. So
Good.
yeah, yeah. So it was good. All right.
But yeah,
Well,
I'm excited for you guys to discover what's out there. Didn't even leave town yet.
no, we haven't. Well, we barely left the town walls just to like go to a tavern that was kind of hovering in the shadow.
Mm.
Well, I know you have a deadline, so you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, we're good. Everybody, thank you for watching. Check out Dolmenwood. It is big and it is beautiful. Stretch your wings, expand your horizons. If you have only played fifth edition, there's a lot of other stuff out there, and you can learn from it and bring it back to 5e. Um, that's what we're doing.
Yep, that's it. All right. Always great to talk to you.
Enjoy it. Absolutely. Thanks, Pat. I appreciate you, man.
All right. See you on the
All right.
next one.
Have a good one.